Welcome to the Addicted to Recovery podcast, where we will delve into the transformative journey of overcoming addiction and embracing a life of recovery. In this podcast, we share stories of hope, resilience and triumph, exploring the challenges, victories and lessons learned along the way. The Addicted to Recovery podcast is a platform for sharing stories of resilience, hope and transformation in the face of addiction. Through candid conversations and heartfelt reflections, we aim to inspire, educate and empower listeners on their own journey of recovery. Join us as we explore the path from darkness to light, from addiction to freedom and from despair to hope. This is Addicted to Recovery. Today. So today's episode is a delicate one. It's an important one, I feel, especially here in Western Bartonshire. Our communities have been hit hard by drug-related deaths, and behind every statistic is a person. Behind every person is a family trying to make sense of that loss that's often sudden, traumatic and deeply misunderstood. So if you're listening today, if you Clydebank, the Barton, the Vale or anywhere else nearby, I want to say this clearly. You're not alone and you're welcome here. So today I'm joined by someone who lost their family member to an addiction and overdose, and they bravely agreed to share part of their story in the hope that it helps someone else feel a little less alone. And I've got personal experience of this, and I feel grief can feel heavy anywhere, but in a place like ours where everyone seems to know someone, it can hit differently. I lost my brother to overdose in June, and then a couple of months later in August I lost my mum to dementia. And I felt as my mother's dementia took over, I felt I had lost her a long time before her death, and I struggle with the fact that I was not as upset as my brother. My brother's death was sudden and it was on his birthday, and I didn't think it would hit me as hard due to his previous behaviours and his addiction. But also working within the addiction field, I had support from colleagues and friends. So over to you, would you be willing to talk a wee bit about those first weeks, months after your loss?
Yep, I sure can. Obviously, going back to what you were saying there, I can relate to what you were saying is the previous experience. I lost my mum 9 years ago, with 10 year in March. Due to an overdose. To be fair, I was always brought up with my gran and grandpa, and I stayed with them all my life. My mum was still a massive part of my life, but obviously due to her problems, and I had to stay with my gran and grandpa. But I'm ever so grateful for them for bringing me up. But I remember just kind of before it, in fact, I'd probably say about a good year and a half before it, we were getting on really well. I've got a little brother and a little sister who, well, I was 19 at the time. My little brother would have been 10 and my little sister would have been 5. And we always made a Sunday our day. We were out, we were doing swimming. My mum was doing brilliant. She was off drugs. Everything was brilliant. Everything was the way you want it to be. But as you were saying there about maybe going back to past experiences, there'd be times where I'd be in my gran and grandpa, and my little brother and my little sister stayed with my mum at that point, kind of throughout their life. But saying about past experiences where you'd maybe get that phone call or you wouldn't hear from her and you'd always fear the worst, and it always ended up being alright. She would maybe be away out, or you maybe whatever she was doing. But that time when she died, I always remember it was a Sunday morning, and the football was on. I was supposed to be going to the football, and it was one of them ones, couldn't get a hold of her in the morning, and I was supposed to be taking my little brother to football. My little brother and my little sister always stayed with us at the weekends, so fortunately for them and everybody else, they were with us that night. So it was a Sunday morning, couldn't get a hold of my mum. My grandpa came up, sorry, and he's like, "Have you heard from your mum?" I was like, "No, I've not heard anything." He's like, "I can't get a hold of her, she's supposed to come and pick my little brother up for football." I was like, "I'll try and phone her." So anyway, I was going to the football that day, and I was like, "I'll swing by and see." So went, and her car was outside, and my mum had a bit of an issue with her foot, so for her car to be outside, I knew she wouldn't be far away from the car because she couldn't exactly really walk for a length of distance. Chapped the door, nothing, and I looked through the window and I seen she was on the couch, and let's just say she obviously wasn't in a fit state, so it was what it was, unfortunately, and my grandpa literally came at that point. But I remember at that point, clear as day, my gran must have phoned me about 8 times, as if to say, like, how phoned me back yet, as if she must have always had that feeling that something maybe bad would happen, and she was maybe always had that worry about my mum, for maybe her experiences, for my mum kind of growing up getting into drugs and addiction. And unfortunately we found her, and she wasn't breathing, phoned the ambulance, they came out, and unfortunately it was an overdose of drugs.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's something I can understand, because if I remember back to my brother this year, I facilitate a family support group, Rocky Roads, and it was funnily enough in the conversation in the group I was talking about my brother, and it was a topic that had come up as, are we going to get that phone call that something had happened? And funnily enough, that night somebody had phoned me, and they hadn't phoned me for a long time, but their family member was in the nursing home alongside my mum, and I thought, are they phoning to tell me that their family member had passed away or whatever it may be? But as part of the group, I don't like to take phone calls, so I just kind of kept going. And then I got a phone call from my sister-in-law, and then I got a phone call from somebody else. And at that point, then the kind of penny kind of dropped. I'm thinking, this is about my brother, so I can get where you're going, and it's that kind of angst and going, oh, what if? And then I went away out to the house, and obviously kind of met the police, met the ambulance, and it's no nice. And families I speak to describe that way a mix of heartbreak, shock, that feeling of trying to stay strong. But everybody knows everybody in this area. And as I say, I've got a lot of anger towards my brother. We obviously that knew his behaviour and where it's now led him to. Do you find people understand what you were going through, or did you feel you were left to deal with it on your own?
Well, I've got a good family support network. As I say, my granny and grandpa have done absolutely everything for me. I can't thank them enough. And to be honest, it's not really probably the last wee while you maybe think about it a wee bit more, of how maybe grateful I've had it. I've spoiled rotten as a kid. But just going back to your question, I'm quite a private person. And to be honest, this is probably the first time I've come out and actually spoke about how I'm feeling and how things went, maybe apart from a few of my mates and my girlfriend and stuff. But I just think, no, I don't think there was a lot of real help, if that makes sense. I felt my help kind of was, I remember that day, as I say, the football was on, and it was Rangers v Celtic, I was supposed to be going to it, and ended up obviously phoning my mate. I was like, because that's it as well, they're phoning like, where are you? You're supposed to be at football. And I was like, no, I'll not make it. And one of my mates ended up coming up, and we kind of went a walk, went back to my house after everything settled down. And before you know it, I can't think, obviously, my mum's friends ended up over. The house ended up a bit busy, and I think for me that kind of overstimulated me a wee bit, and I was like, I'd rather just go out and maybe have my own time. So I remember me and my mate went a walk just for a wee while, and I got my girlfriend at the time, and we kind of just went a wee walk around Ballock and whatever, and I think that kind of helped a wee bit, and kind of just to go in. But I think the worst thing about it was maybe trying to tell my little brother and my little sister as well, because they were also a lot younger, and as I say, obviously they end up staying with my gran and grandpa now. But I don't think there was a lot of help, to be honest. I thought maybe, see, to be fair, there probably was help out there, I just didn't know where to look. And obviously through my mum being in drugs, there was social workers involved with my little brother and little sister to make sure they were always alright. And when that happened, they ended up came in the next day on the Monday, and they kind of spoke about things. But as I say, at that time, I think you were a bit numb to it. It's maybe, as I say, it's maybe not the last wee while I've thought, but you kind of think back and you go over things, and you kind of start to, remember what happened, and you can talk about it a wee bit more. To be fair, I see you saying you were quite angry with your brother. I don't think I was angry. I think I was just more gutted. Like, I just did my girlfriend just a wee boy 7 weeks ago, and it's things like that they maybe miss out on. Like our first grandchild, my little brother, my little sister, them growing up and doing ever so well in school and getting into their hobbies. And, my wee brother, he's a funny guy, and my wee sister's got a good personality as well. And I think that's the thing. I'm not angry about it. I'm just a bit more gutted that she's missed them kind of growing up and, experiencing them growing up and being young adults as well.
I know, and that's what when I say angry, it's because I look at my mum. My mum was struggling with her dementia, and then maybe no recognising us and no getting us, and then I see my brother. And the thing was, I've said in previous podcasts, I've shared my story a wee bit. My brother was up there daily seeing my mum, so it's not that he didn't love her or forgot about things like that. I'm just angry in a way that he couldn't get better, and that's something I'm dealing with just now, and why I asked that question about support or what did you do, because I work within the field of addiction, and through my work I've spoke to counsellors and all that kind of thing, because I don't want resentments building up in me and my role, that someone else that maybe comes in that says, they've overdosed and naloxone saved them or whatever and they've survived, and I've got that resentment as if to say, well, why my brother and no you? I don't want to get like that, You know, I want to be that professional way. You know, and I kind of learn to talk about it in my role and with the family group that I'm involved in, that we kind of set up. And that kind of brings me to a bit stigma, you know, and I think in Western Bartonshire, we're getting better about being vocal about what's going on, like mental health, where we've got Mentor Scotland now set up and doing well and supporting people. And we've got addiction and all that within here, where there's recovery hubs and stuff like that, where people are going to. But I sometimes feel when it comes to overdose, families still feel that they can be judged by the community and other people, and sometimes by people who never even knew their loved one, who maybe just think that's what they deserve. You know, that kind of thing, because they've made that choice, and it's no, for me, they're human beings. Do you think, was there any stigma within you, or did you feel any stigma for people?
No, to be honest, probably a little bit. You feel as if maybe people are talking about it, and because like, everybody knows everybody, as you said at the start of the podcast, and I think, obviously, when that happens, police are going to turn up, ambulances are going to turn up, and people look out and people are nosy about it, and that's just probably human nature at the end of the day. People want to find out what's happening, and then, you know, like a neighbour will come up, is everything alright, and they end up knowing, and then before you know it kind of goes to neighbours. So I remember always thinking like, oh, everybody's going to know what's happened here, and you know what I mean, and I've not got back to my poor gran yet type thing, so first thing you do is phone her. What I will say is my gran and grandpa were a bit old school, so I think for us growing up, it was always kind of the letter of the law, that's maybe the wrong thing to say, but we were always kind of grounded and made sure we respected others. And I'm not saying that I couldn't talk to them, but I always felt that just because they were a bit old school and they would never talk about things, they probably spoke to each other. As I say, it's probably not you're a bit older, you realise, but I maybe felt I couldn't really go to them as such. And then, as I say, my little brother and my little sister, they were only 5 and 10 at the time, and I was 19, so I felt for me it was probably a bit better going to my mates. But I probably did feel at the time, but it's probably me overthinking it as well. You've got that many emotions going through your head, and there probably was people talking about it to a certain extent, and that's what happens. But as I say, it probably wasn't in a bad way. So there probably was as I say, it's hard to say when other people, but nobody ever came up. Everybody was always brilliant. Oh, sorry to hear about your mum, sorry to hear about this, something you need. But nah, I don't know if there was maybe too much stigma attached, to be fair. Good,
and that's something I'm glad to hear about. You know, and that's what I feel, and I hear this in my family support group, that people, you say you went and spoke to friends, and I've heard people in the family support group saying they had a wide circle of friends, and then they went and told them about their problems, but then they felt as if, well, I've spoke to that same person about this same thing every time I meet them. I don't want to say that, and then all of a sudden the circle of friends gets smaller and smaller and smaller, because you don't want to keep talking about it, you know. And that's why, for me, I thought, right, I need to speak to someone, went to a bit of counselling, just to get things off my chest, you know. And that, but I'm glad to hear that you says there wasn't much stigma involved in it, because I think sometimes families can get maybe embarrassed by what's happened, you know, that they don't want to talk about it and they think they're being judged within a community. My mum, certainly, with my brother's behaviours, my mum, when he'd done anything, my mum would just retreat to the house and come away out the road as if she had some sort of part to play in it, you know, my brother's behaviours. But taking us to losing, you know, so when you look at, do you think losing your loved one, has it changed your perspective on addiction?
100%.
In what way do you think it has?
I just feel as if I've got more relation to people. Let's see, maybe if my mum ever died of addiction, like if you maybe go into Glasgow, even Dumbarton, sometimes you see people with addiction and they're also struggling, and as you said, they're human beings. And I've heard some comments, not to just obviously passing comment, look at him, this and that. We've all heard the words, and I always, it doesn't make me angry, but it makes me feel for them a wee bit, because as I say, these people have got problems and they probably need that help. And so it probably has changed my mind. As I say, I'd never be like nasty to them, I'd never try my best to be nasty, but as I say, you just kind of feel as if like you just want to kind of give them a cuddle and just hopefully everything for the best. Like, there'd be nothing better to see like drugs be out the window altogether, and you maybe see these people maybe change their life around. There's nothing better than seeing that. So it definitely has changed. As I say, maybe if I grew up, I'd maybe have the opinions, oh look at him, he's does this, you just think the worst of them, when in fact, matter of fact, they've just got a problem and they probably just need that arm around the shoulder and that bit of help to maybe turn their life around.
Mm-hmm. And I felt with my brother sometimes it was the addiction was causing some of the behaviours. Because I would even say that, I've heard family members spoke to me and people within my work, parents and all that have had problems with maybe a son or a daughter and that, been angry with them, been threatening with them and all that. My brother never ever done that towards my mum, done it to other people, and that's where my mum got embarrassed and come away, and I think having a family member with an addiction, I think it does change you. What emotions do you think were the most difficult for you to navigate after their passing?
Well, as I say, it probably took me a while for it to settle in, so that like so that I went back to kind of work after 2 weeks, and I think the best thing was for me at that time, I believe, was just to try and get back into a routine and move on. In a certain way, it probably is the way to do it type thing, but as I say, it's maybe not later on, now I've had a kid, like my first baby boy, how well he's doing. It's just like the emotions are maybe just a wee bit gutted, and you're a bit like, oh, I wish she was just here, maybe just to see him and, take him out. And as I say, my mum loved me, my little brother and my wee sister loads. Like, as much as she had her problems, I know for a fact she loved the three of us, and she always wanted us to do well. And, I think, but back then, it was probably just a bit numbing. But I seem to get on with it really well. I thought I coped quite well for a while. And as I say, it wasn't just you kind of get a bit older and you start thinking about things. And even, like, as I say, going back, my wee boy was born, you're looking back old photographs, you remember things, and you start to kind of go, oh, I remember that. And I remember the Sundays we'd go out, and one day we'd go swimming, the next day we'd go to the park, picnic, cinema, whatever we'd do. So it's probably hard to explain, but probably just more gutted than anything that she's not here, as I say, to see my baby boy and then my little brother and my sister and myself to grow up in that.
Did you ever seek any support when your mum was alive? I know you say you were 19, so probably younger again when your mum was in her addiction. Did you ever seek any support, or did your gran and grandpa ever seek any support around, like, family support or looking at services, or did you not understand that was there?
I probably didn't understand it. I'm not saying I had it well. I knew my mum was a drug addict. I knew she was into drugs. I felt she would come out it and go in it and come out it and come in it. For me, I was probably hidden away from it a wee bit. My wee brother was probably he was at that age where he probably seen a wee bit more than me at a young age, which is also a wee bit heartbreaking to say. My little sister, she's probably a bit young, but probably knew at the time something wasn't right. So I think I was definitely hidden from it a wee bit. I remember, like, a couple of times, like, she would, like, come over and you could tell she'd been on drugs, and I thought as a wee guy, like my granny grandpa wouldn't have known. She'd maybe be trying to fall asleep and stuff here. I'm nudging her to waking her up, like, trying to think, oh, they'll know. And obviously they did know, and it was, thinking back, like, actually you're just a young boy trying to kind of get through things and try to do your best and keep the peace in the family type thing.
And that stuff that we talk regular in the family support group about, kinship care and family members taking on that burden of bringing someone up when they feel maybe they've done their job by bringing their own children up, and now they're bringing their grandchildren up and all the rest of it. And I personally feel that's a stress on people within my family support group. We hear that a lot, stories and all that, and I'm hoping now that we can try and look at services and look at what's about in the area. I think at the moment in West Dun now we've got a bereavement group, for people to attend who've lost to overdose or addiction in any way. We've got some family support groups. As I mentioned earlier, we've got Mentor Scotland that looks at mental health and all that. And as I say, I've accessed some of that, and as you says, you've no really, you were maybe sheltered from it. Gran and Grandad doing a wee bit of that. Do you feel there's enough services to help families deal with a loved one's passing?
Well, my little sister, she went to a thing in school, pupil family support, and another one, Seasons of Growth. So through up school, I thought, like, they were excellent. We're still up till now. She'll go, like, maybe once a month to a wee group, and, like, they're absolutely brilliant for her. Now I think they're starting to get more and more. Like, I think social media is massive. I think, like, there's a lot on social media. Like you say, Mentor Scotland. If you look on social media, you'll see them. And I've never been to them, but they're doing a fantastic job. I think there's stuff on the NHS website. I think the big thing for me was probably just kind of talking to a couple of my mates, and my girlfriend, I can talk to her no bother, and probably vice versa, like, if she's got problems, but that's just part and parcel of life and kind of relationship. But I don't know, I think there is something missing though. I reckon there could be something out there that, I don't know, maybe it's not advertised enough. That's maybe a thing. If there is, like maybe stuff through the NHS, and it's like a Mentor Scotland can only maybe put out so much, but I think there probably is stuff out there, but maybe not a lot of people know about it, or maybe people are too scared to turn up as well.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it is, as you say, it's getting it out there. And this is why when I looked at this podcast and things like that, through a social media aspect, I look at Mentor Scotland, I look at other people doing things like this, and I think this is the way to kind of go, rather than maybe a poster thing where people maybe don't pay attention to it, but having something like this to kind of look at, you know, and like us two sitting here chatting just now, you know, we've both lost, you know, and it's both lost through the same thing, you know, addiction, overdose. It's sudden. For me, it's annoying, you know, that we've lost someone. Then you've got Christmases and you say you've just now became a father, and you feel now that at that point, thinking back, your mum's missing out in these things.
Aye, of course.
You know, and that's the same with my brother. And sometimes when I sit and think myself with my brother, you know, when my mum's passing now, I think, what would they have done at that point? Because in a way, my mum was the person, the kind of glue that held everything together, like your granny and grandpa. You know, we maybe subconsciously or consciously had a bit of resentment towards him, ways behaviours, ways addiction, you know, and go and get the help. And maybe we felt naively that he just wasn't bothering. Maybe he just couldn't cope with it and do it. And I look at a lot of that. Do you feel that's maybe with your mum?
Aye, you can relate to that a wee bit. I think if my mum could click her fingers, come off the drugs the next day, she would have. I think, but that's why it's an addiction. And as I say, she obviously was doing really well for maybe that year and a half, and whether she took drugs in and amongst that, probably did, but probably just kind of managed to keep herself controlled. And I think there is just kind of people maybe don't know how to cope, and they don't know who to turn to as an addiction. And I think there's, you know, my dad was into drugs as well, and he's going through a programme just now, and he's doing really, really well, which is good to see. And I don't know if my mum could get that, but it was maybe harder for her, maybe having, like, looking after my little brother and sister, like, as much as that can be stressful, school runs, you know, and, you know, having to put up with like, young children at that time. Maybe a wee bit at party was maybe I wasn't there as well. I'd been kind of took off her. I don't know, I think she'd not always mention it, but I remember we had a couple of chats and she was quite apologetic and quite upset about it, but I always said to her, that's life, and like, nobody can take the fact that you're my mum away, that nobody will take that away. And she was only 39 when she died, and I think back then also she had Facebook and Instagrams and stuff, but social media probably wasn't as big even 9 years ago as it is today, so I think social media will help, definitely. And
I think, as you've said there, you said earlier on, you know, social work was involved and all that, so there could have been an element of that there where your mum wanted to hide a wee bit, because they didn't want social work involved with the other two kids if you've been took off her and all that. So it's maybe us in services ourselves kind of looking and saying, right, how do we help this? Let's no judge, let's no chastise this person because of that. You know, let's no break families up because of that. Let's look and say, how can we support it? You know, that kind of thing. And I hear stories with kinship care and all that, the trouble they've got trying to get support, maybe try to get financial support and all that to help this, you know, person that's come into their life that they're trying to support without them getting into care or anything like that. You know, so that's maybe something that we can, I think everybody, community in that, needs to explore. And I would just like to kind of finish, one, to thank you for taking part and being so honest. But if you've listened to previous podcasts, I always ask my guests this question. If you had the whole world's attention for 5 minutes, what would you say?
Just talk. You've got to talk to each other, talk to your mates, and be positive about things. As much as, you know, my mum's not here, there's still a lot of positives, good memories, really good memories. And you know what? She'll never leave my heart. She's always going to be there. And do you know what? Whether you believe in, you know, whatever you believe in, she's always going to be looking down, keeping an eye on me, keeping an eye on my wee baby boy. And as I say, maybe going forward, maybe don't be too kind of quick to judge people maybe in addictions, and you know, as I say, just try and still have a positivity about things. As much as, you know, we all have good days and bad days, but definitely try and keep upbeat at times. And, you know, if you've got a bad feeling or a bad day, it's never going to last forever. And as I say, if there's somebody out there maybe try to reach out and they're maybe a wee bit scared, maybe you're the one to maybe try and reach out to them and help them out a wee bit.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for taking part.
Thank you.